The views expressed and the opinions given by the individual host, guest, random reptoid, or chupacabra may not necessarily reflect those of AM 950 Radio, its affiliates, or its sponsors. Now, it's time to step into the unknown. There are things people experience but never talk about. A shadow moving in the corner, flickering of the lights, a disembodied voice. We invite you to talk with us. Share your story, share your experience, because this isn't just your story, this is our story. This is GhostBox Radio with Greg Bakun.
And this is GhostBox Radio on AM 950, where every night we talk about the paranormal, ufology, Bigfoot, and so much more. Thank you for joining me. My name is Greg Bakun. Really appreciate this. Now, if you've been following anything with UFOs, ufology, aliens, anything of that ilk, you are probably very well aware of the abduction of Betty and Barney Hill from 1961. And so today I wanted to talk about this. I wanted to bring someone on to discuss this. Tonight my guest is Kathleen Marden, and she is the niece to Betty and Barney Hill, and her insatiable interest in UFOs and ETs began in 1961 when her aunt and uncle had a close encounter and UFO abduction in New Hampshire's White Mountains. As a family member, Kathleen gained firsthand knowledge of Betty and Barney's UFO encounters on the day they arrived home, and 2 days later, she accompanied her parents and siblings on a visit to the Hills' home. She has devoted years of painstaking investigation of the Hills' anomalous events and archival research on their UFO abduction case. As the trustee of Betty's estate, she selected the files from Betty's personal collection for a permanent archive at the Milne Special Collections Library, UNH Library, University of New Hampshire. Her formal investigation of the Hills UFO abduction led her to a career as an author, investigator, and researcher. From 1991 to 2023, she volunteered for the Mutual UFO Network in various positions, such as Director of Field Investigator, Training, and Founder, Director of MUFON's Experiencer Resource Team. Over a 10-year period, Kathleen expanded her team from 3 members to 45 trained, seasoned specialists and attracted PhD and MD psychological and research consultants. During her years as a UFO investigator and researcher, she worked on 3 studies of nearly 5,000 experiencers of extraterrestrial contact, and her compassion for these unfairly targeted incidents led to alterations in her focus from cold investigation to advocacy of the respectful treatment of people who have interacted willingly or unwillingly with non-human entities. Her best-selling book with scientific ufologist and lecturer Stanton T. Friedman is Captured: The Betty and Barney Hill UFO Experience. The author of 2 additional books, Science Was Wrong and Fact Fiction Flying Saucers. Her book with Dennis Stoner, The Alien Abduction Files, includes her investigation of 6 intergenerational cases of ET contact. Kathleen, welcome to GhostBox Radio. There is so much that we could talk about just based on your bio yourself. I mean, how interesting that this moment in time of your aunt and uncle, this experience they had in 1961, has truly changed your direction of literally your life, and you probably had no idea where this was going to take you.
That is absolutely correct. I was 13 years old, and I was a good student, very interested in science and also in English, that sort of thing, but had absolutely no interest in UFOs. In fact, I hadn't even heard about them. And then all of a sudden, everything was turned upside down when my aunt called my mother and told her how frightened she was that she and Barney had been contaminated by something from that craft the evening before because it had come so close to their car, and particularly to Barney because he had walked into a field to get a better look at it, and it hovered only 80 to 100 feet above him. So a lot of concern.
And this is at the point that they had really no recollection of anything that happened to them apart from what they remember being in the car, right? So when they're talking to your mother about this, as far as they're concerned, it just really came to them, and they probably already, I don't know if they even realized of the time loss yet. So it seemed very early on where they didn't even have any information of what happened to them.
Yeah. Well, let me tell you what they did know.
Sure.
When they arrived home, Betty's watch was broken. So was Barney's. They were missing time. They were a couple of hours late. They didn't, at that point, have it nailed down to, specifically 2 hours. But they noticed it was 2 or 3 hours later than they had anticipated. Betty's dress was torn in several locations. So no reason for that. Barney's best dress shoes were so deeply scraped, that's the word he used, scraped, that he had to buy new shoes. There were shiny spots on the trunk of the car that made a compass needle spin, whirling rapidly, indicating a magnetic field. They had conscious recall of the close encounter with the craft. Barney had conscious recall of observing what he described as figures dressed in shiny black uniforms that were somehow not human. He had those memories. They remembered finding themselves off the highway and on a dirt road with tall trees all around. They remembered a roadblock. They remembered a fiery orb, but that's all they remembered. Then suddenly they were back on the highway again with the second series of buzzing sounds striking the trunk of their vehicle. And all of these questions about where were we? Where did this happen?
Just incredible. Now I want to take kind of a sidestep here for a second, because I was doing a little bit of research, and one of the things I had seen somewhere else, and seeing stuff reported other places, it's always hard to know what's real and not real. And one of the things I had read was that I thought it was Betty's sister that had seen something like UFOs before this had happened. Is that something? Is that true? Is that, or is that just someone making something up that isn't quite true?
That is true.
Okay.
One time, my mother and another of Betty's sisters were on their Friday night grocery shopping trip, and they saw the cigar-shaped craft hovering over a field. And they stopped the car. They went to the house of some people they knew, and the people who lived there went out, and they also saw this cigar-shaped craft hovering low over the field, and there were smaller craft flying around it.
That's really, really interesting. And as time has gone on now, and especially like when we get into the 21st century, we are hearing about ships, crafts, whatever we want to call them, that are like tic-tac shape. I don't consider that too terribly far from people saying something looks like a cigar. It's that same sort of a cylinder sort of piece to it. And I actually,
Yes.
On another program I did, I had a friend of mine talk about his mom in 1969 having a similar sort of experience to what your mother and her sister had experienced outside with another cigar-shaped craft with, it just being out in a field, and it just had something. And, it makes me wonder how many of these sort of sightings have happened that we don't even know about, because at that point, maybe not as many people were trying to report that. I mean, even Betty and Barney, they wanted to keep this to themselves too, for the most part.
That's correct. And, I would estimate that millions of people have had these sightings. I've heard, just because of my profession,
Yeah.
from an incredible number of people from around the world who have had these sightings with unconventional craft. There's no way they could be from this planet, particularly when it's something dating back into the 1950s and 1960s that is exhibiting incredibly advanced technology.
I find too, and the reason why I bring up your mom and your mom having that sighting is, I believe UFOs, aliens, that they glom on to people, and I feel like they stay with them, even though they may not remember everything. I feel like that, in a sense, perhaps they become a case study for and they keep returning in some form or another. It doesn't necessarily have to be abduction. It's just a theory of mine. Do you think that way at all, or does that make any sense to you?
I have statistical evidence that backs up your statement.
Okay.
And a lot of it too. Yes. Many people have had first sightings. It tends to run in families. This scientific program being run by these non-humans tends to be intergenerational. Mm-hmm. And, they have done this dating back for who knows how long. I mean, I've interviewed people who are now deceased who they would have been 90 or 100 years old, and they had these experiences when they were young.
It's just absolutely fascinating. And, you got to also wonder how many people who have experienced abductions of sorts, or visitations, or whatever you want to call them, and yet they don't even realize what it is. And you got to wonder, when I'm hearing about Betty in particular, Betty seemed to be very strong-willed. Betty seemed to be someone who was like if I'm not mistaken, the lead non-human says to her that you're going to forget this, and she's like, I am not forgetting this. I think it takes someone with an exceptional, just a strong will to keep that with them. Yeah.
Yes. And in fact, she saw what she called a book, what today we think of as a tablet, that had a thin, stiff, like plastic cover. And inside, she opened it up, and embedded in it were rows of symbols. And she remembered those symbols and wrote them down for me in the year 2000. She thought she was going to get to take that with her as evidence. And she could not take it, but she took it as evidence up here. And there have been scientific studies done on symbols. And her symbols are nearly identical to other symbols that experiencers under hypnosis have sketched. And these were 2 academic studies by PhD psychologists who did this. But she wanted to take that book. She was holding it when she was leaving the craft. And those little guys who a friend of mine calls them the bellhops. They're the ones who take you to and from the craft. They're the guards to make sure that you don't get off the craft with anything that belongs to them. And when he took that away from Betty, she was furious, and she was fighting for it. They took Barney back to the car while Betty was probably stamping her feet and saying, "You said I could have that. Now give it to me." And, and so the one that she called the leader said, because this was telepathic, "I'm sorry, but they have decided that you can't have it." So apparently, it wasn't his job to make that decision. It was those police forces' decision.
I love the fact that he's passing the buck. Hey, it's not me. I had nothing to do with this. It's them. Get mad at them. No, I'm your friend.
Right.
And in a way, it seems like that's what he was really trying to be throughout the whole thing. Like, it's not anything we're gonna do is not gonna hurt. When she did get the needle in her to see if she's pregnant, it wasn't him that came over and eased the pain for her and stuff.
It was. Yeah.
So it's just like maybe typical male. I don't know, passing like, hey, I'd love to give you this book, but
What I've learned about this from all of the studies and the thousands of experiencers that I've spoken with and my team has spoken with is that there is always one familiar entity who you are their project.
Yeah.
So they're in charge, and you see them throughout your lifetime over and over again. They don't switch from one to another. This is your escort and your educator, not necessarily the scientist. There's generally a physician and a scientist, but this is the person who communicates with you, who educates you, who makes you feel comfortable.
It's incredible. Why don't we go ahead and do this? I want to take my first break. When we come back, we have this amazing conversation going on with Kathleen Marden, and we're talking about Benny and Barney Hill, their abduction, 1961. We have so much to get through. You're listening to GhostBox Radio on AM 950. Twin Cities Con returns to the Minneapolis Convention Center for their fourth year, November 8th through 10th. Twin Cities Con is a celebration of comics, toys, TV, film, art, cosplay, games, and all things nerdy. It's also a family-friendly event where you can meet your favorite celebrities, browse the vendor hall and artist alley for the coolest merch, watch celebrity Q&A, and even more. Twin Cities Con is bigger and better than ever before, with guests like Anakin Skywalker himself, Hayden Christensen, Stephanie Beatrice from Brooklyn Nine-Nine and Encanto, WWE Hall of Fame wrestler Sting, and Lou Diamond Phillips. Plus, your favorite voice actors. 3 days of action-packed fun in the heart of Minneapolis at the Minneapolis Convention Center. Tickets start at $25. Kids tickets are just $8 for the entire weekend. VIP tickets also available, including some really cool VIP perks. Don't wait to get your tickets because early bird pricing is for a limited time. Buy your tickets and get more information at TwinCitiesCon.com. Greg Bakun here. Like you, I love good, fresh, delicious food. So I want to tell you about this treasure in Roseville called Maverick's Real Roast Beef. Maverick's has the best roast beef sandwiches I've ever had. Made fresh every order. Add fries or onion rings dropped in the fryer when ordered, and you have a winning combination. Maverick's Real Roast Beef has a lot more than roast beef, so check out their website, mavericksbeef.com, or check out their restaurant on Lexington in Roseville. Have you ever met someone who not only can help you on a deep spiritual level, but also potentially change your life? Refined Divine is an extremely gifted psychic medium who travels the nation and lives right here in the Midwest. And she offers mediumship, mentorship, house and business parties, energy healing, palm readings, and so much more. Refined Divine has helped thousands, and she can help you.
Hi, this is Psychic Medium Deb. I cannot wait to hear from you. You can go to refineddivinepsychic.com.
This is Chad, owner of AM 950. Recently, I had a large order of custom designed t-shirts that needed to be turned around in a hurry. I knew exactly who to call. Grady Gear Company. Grady Gear Company is a local company that handles large and small custom clothing and apparel orders. I had a lot of questions from color, shirt quality, and what sizes we needed. Grady Gear Company was great to work with. They got us what we needed on time, and now everybody's looking great around the station in their new gear. Start your order at GradyGearCo.com.
We know you value buying local, especially when it comes to your magical supplies. So if you're looking for grimoires, decks, jewelry, candles, or herbs that are locally sourced, then come on down to Magus Books and Herbs. Curated for your ritual, ceremonial, spiritual, and spellwork needs, we've got all the tools to make your working extra. So make that prosperity ritual one that keeps on giving by visiting us at 1848 Central Avenue Northeast in Minneapolis, or visit us online at magusbooks.com.
And welcome back to GhostBox Radio on AM 950. My name is Greg Bakun. Thank you so very much for joining me tonight. What a great episode we have here. As we talked about in the first segment, we're talking about the abduction in 1961 of Betty and Barney Hill. It is something that I really kind of think is very much the groundwork for what we have heard about other abductions with aliens, non-humans, whatever you like to call them, over the years. With me tonight is my very special guest, Kathleen Marden. And Kathleen has written many books on this. One in particular that I like to point out is Captured, the Betty and Barney Hill UFO Experience. There's a 60th anniversary update to it that you can get on Amazon. You can get it also, we can get it from your website too, can't we, Kathleen?
You can purchase autographed copies within the United States from my website.
Why wouldn't you?
Kathleen-Marden.com.
Kathleen-Marden.com. Why wouldn't you want to do that? That's my question to you all. And written by Stanton T. Friedman, who is greatly missed in the field. I had the pleasure of meeting him only once, but it was, what a gentleman, first of all. Just
Yes.
a very... I hate to get on my soapbox here a little bit, but I feel like people now who are just kind of relatively new into the research of these fields and stuff, they kind of just try to be really all out there and all over the place and sensational a little bit. But like people like yourself and Stanton, just very much you're letting the research do the talking. Very interesting, but just very accessible. And I want to thank you for that. That's really wonderful.
Well, we both believe in the science of it. And so we attempted, I thought we did a very good job at remaining unbiased and as scientific as possible.
And that's what's needed. Now, granted, I will be perfectly honest, I do want to be the one that is just like, throw science out the window. Let's just talk about how the aliens exist and how they come here and stuff, and all that's good stuff. But people like you ground people like me, and that's important. That's really important, and I appreciate that. So we were talking in the last segment about we're talking a little bit more of like Betty, and talking about that she was very much strong-willed. She really kept her wits about herself throughout the whole thing, and it's like you don't really realize it until sometime later when her and Barney go and do hypnosis sessions. But first of all, I want to say nothing wrong with how Barney reacted. I would have been more of the Barney, I think, where I just would have been a little, I think, probably more terrified, as much as I'd like to think that I am, someone who would be able to take that on. It's something new. I don't blame him at all. Do you feel like there's something about how these aliens, they focus on people, and maybe something about Betty and that strong will plays a part with why your family has been a focus?
Well, I think, first of all, let me say that Barney is the one who had the conscious recall of observing those non-humans. He was standing alone in that field. Betty was in the car and the door was open, so the interior light was on. She couldn't see what Barney was doing.
Sure.
He's the one who stood in that field, who saw those non-humans, who felt threatened, who felt like he was going to be captured. And so he had a different personality than Betty. He just wanted to suppress it all. He wanted to forget about it. He didn't want to talk about it to anyone. And Betty just wouldn't let go of it. She was so curious. She wanted answers. And so, they had completely different points of view on this. I don't think that it's Betty's strong will that caused these non-humans to become interested in my genetic line. I suspect that it has more to do with the fact that we are a group of people who are very focused on love for others, for giving, for social work. My grandfather was a selectman, in fact, the head of the Board of Selectmen for 1 year, or 2 years, whatever that term is.
Sure.
He was an elected police officer. They were, very much interested in the welfare of others, in advancing humanity, in civil rights, in human rights. Barney was on the NAACP. He was legal redress for the regional board of the NAACP. He and Betty were two individuals who helped to set up the Rockingham County Community Action Program. In fact, Barney received an award for his work on that. They set up a literacy program for the Archdiocese of the state of New Hampshire in Manchester, so that illiterate people could learn to read and therefore could vote, because in those days you had to pass a literacy test. So many things. Barney was elected to the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights as the state advisory board committee member. And he and Betty and I were invited guests at Lyndon Johnson's inauguration. All of this was before any of the abduction UFO information was made public.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Those are great points. And, it's, you do wonder, that makes sense that perhaps seeing that it's a lineage of a family that is really all about making other people's lives better, trying to try to help people grow for themselves as well, that maybe that is something that absolutely is of great interest to different species that are looking in on us. How does that work? Why would they do that? Maybe, and it makes you wonder a little bit too, for lack of a better term, aliens, like what is their moral compass? That do they feel the same way, or is it, dare I say the word, alien to them, where they want to see what is it that makes this family want to do this, and is there something genetic in them, perhaps, like it's like an absolute science experiment? I don't know.
Well, they're very concerned about human aggression, about our warlike tendencies, and they over and over, for years, when they have taken people to craft, part of their education has been anti-nuclear. Experiences are shown images of nuclear war, of Holocaust, of people dying, of their flesh melting off their bodies. Horrible images.
Yeah.
And also, they've been educated on being good stewards to the Earth's environment. So those are two major concerns that these non-humans have.
It is, and I know I'm stretching this into the land of fantasy because we just don't know really one way or the other. But I always, I hear over and over people putting out there that they believe that people from not this planet watching us, they do not want to see war on our end. They do not want to see, they don't want to see us using nuclear weapons and stuff like that. And like there is, whether it's a pacifist sort of approach or that they just don't want to see a planet destroy itself over any sort of aggression. It's an interesting thought, at least. Yes,
and in fact, in my latest books, Forbidden Knowledge, A Personal Journey from Alien Abduction to Spiritual Transformation, editions 1 and 2, I talk about an experiment that I participated in for a period of 2 years. We met once a month, a team of investigators. As an experiment, we were looking for physical evidence and also information. And what the ETs told us, and they did give us physical evidence, but what they answered for us is that we have reached the point in our development where we're quite capable of destroying everything on this planet, that our spiritual growth is out of sync with our technological progress. And when there is this imbalance, they have seen this occur on other planets where there is a complete destruction. And they are extraordinarily concerned about it happening here. They also have I'm trying to think of it like a prime directive.
Sure.
That they do not want to interfere with us, with our development. They quietly work to assist in our development. They come back from time to time. But when they came back and they saw that we were capable of destroying everything on this planet, they decided to stay, to do what they could do to try to solve this huge problem that we were facing. And so that's when they started to take many, many people along family lines. And I don't know how successful they will be. They claim that they have met with the heads of governments, that they know that they're there, that our governments do not want to cooperate. They do not want to acknowledge their presence. They don't want any interference from them. So they work very quietly. And they did say that if we do enter into a nuclear war, they won't let us destroy ourselves.
Oh, interesting. Well, that's good to know.
I hope it's true.
Right. That's kind of my thought. I was like, well, I don't want to put it to the test, though.
No.
It's interesting. And I think when we get into the third segment, I want to talk a lot more about your personal journey down this road with being able to communicate and having them communicate with you. So I want to go back to Betty real fast. Okay. And Betty had, I if I'm not mistaken, after the ordeal that they had after the abduction, she was getting dreams, right? She was getting like very, very strong dreams. Is this them coming back and doing more work with her, or are they truly dreams?
She had 5 dreams.
Okay.
It took me years to find the psychology behind all of this, but what I discovered is that when you have this kind of experience and you have a great deal of anxiety about it, you work through this anxiety through your dreams. But there's something special about the dreams that she had because they occurred just before she awoke in the morning. And so they were like hypnopompic dreams where she was in sort of a hypnotic state. And when you have those kinds of dreams, you can have a combination of what really happened combined with fantasy material that helps you to work through this anxiety.
Interesting. Okay. That is very interesting. I mean, it's just so many complex moving parts with what happened with her. And, what happened with both of them. I'm sorry. What happened with both of them. I find Betty very fascinating about it. And that's why I keep leaning to her because she was much more open about it. And I also understand exactly where Barney was coming from. And even that being said, I mean, was there a point, because both of them, they went through hypnosis. They wanted to find the answer for themselves, not necessarily letting the world know about that. That was kind of a byproduct. Were they terribly disappointed when it became more and more out there, or they just embrace it and just like, well, it's out there now?
Well, when there was a violation of confidentiality that carried their story to a newspaper reporter, and it was in the Boston Herald for 5 consecutive days, they were absolutely distressed. In fact, I have a letter that Dr. Simon wrote that talks about the level of distress that Barney was experiencing. The 2 of them drove down to my childhood home. I grew up across the street from my grandparents. So we all met at my grandparents' house as a family and discussed, where do we go from here? This impacted not just them, but the entire family. Now in New Hampshire, you know everybody.
Yeah.
It was a small state back then. My father was the Boy Scout leader in town, and that sort of thing. His best friend was the chief of police, and so we decided together as a family that since the cat was out of the bag, Betty and Barney should speak about it. So they did speak publicly for the first time at the Universalist Unitarian Church in Dover, New Hampshire. It wasn't their church. They went to the one in Portsmouth, but this was in Dover. They were introduced by the public information officer at Pease Air Force Base, who talked about UFO sightings in the area. And then they were brought out. They did not talk about the abduction or what they remembered through hypnosis. They talked about that close encounter with the craft, the things that they remembered. And then John Fuller was there. He was a professional writer. He was in the area to write the book, The Incident at Exeter. And he approached Betty and Barney, took them out to dinner that night, and started to begin to talk to them about allowing him to write their story.
Just thinking, and before we head off to break here, just thinking about the legacy of their story and how it's helped so many people who, probably by that time have had something that they could relate to years later, finding out about the story. I mean, I know that Betty lived a great deal longer than Barney. I mean, so she was able to see that, I think, that resurgence of maybe more of an embrace of UFOs becoming a little bit more mainstream, what she went through becoming a little bit more mainstream. I hope that she found solace in seeing how her story helped others.
I think that she did. And she had solace in the idea, too, that there were many, many military people who quietly supported her and had supported Barney during his lifetime. He died when he was 46 in 1969. I lived with Betty after he died and drove his car to college. But yes, I think that she found solace in that, also she was pleased with the idea that she had the opportunity to meet beings from another planet.
Yeah.
This was really a big deal for her to have met people from that far away.
That's incredible. Why don't we go ahead and do this? Let's get our next break in here. When we come back, we're going to turn the focus on Kathleen. I want to hear about her story and what she's been doing in her work. So exciting. You're listening to GhostBox Radio on AM 950. Greg Bakun here. I love historic tours of Minneapolis and seeing everything it has to offer. But if you know me, I like to include a little spooky in my tours, which is why I found the perfect combination. Minneapolis Trolley Tours does this amazing candlelight ghost tour that you have to check out. It's an extremely immersive experience. It's a trolley trip that starts out at a haunted mansion, traveling around Minneapolis locations exposing ghost stories that the public and business owners would rather left untold. Then a tour of the aforementioned haunted mansion where ghosts of past residents from the 1800s reside, plus a lot of surprises to discover. Next, experience Gertrude's After Hours. Did I mention Gertrude is the mansion's most famous ghost? Maybe she'll show up. And you finish up the tour at Gertrude's Lounge in the haunted basement of the mansion with refreshments and Q&A. The trolleys are climate controlled and the mansion is restored to perfection. Check out MinneapolisTrolleyTours.com for more information. Twin Cities Con returns to the Minneapolis Convention Center for their 4th year, November 8th through 10th. Twin Cities Con is a celebration of comics, toys, TV, film, art, cosplay, games, and all things nerdy. It's also a family-friendly event where you can meet your favorite celebrities, browse the vendor hall and artist alley for the coolest merch, watch celebrity Q&A, and even more. Twin Cities Con is bigger and better than ever before, with guests like Anakin Skywalker himself, Hayden Christensen, Stephanie Beatrice from Brooklyn Nine-Nine and Encanto, WWE Hall of Fame wrestler Sting, and Lou Diamond Phillips. plus your favorite voice actors. 3 days of action-packed fun in the heart of Minneapolis at the Minneapolis Convention Center. Tickets start at $25. Kids tickets are just $8 for the entire weekend. VIP tickets also available, including some really cool VIP perks. Don't wait to get your tickets because early bird pricing is for a limited time. Buy your tickets and get more information at TwinCitiesCon.com. Gritty Gear Company is a great place to go for clothing that is fun and expressive. But did you know we also do custom orders on demand? We've worked with all types of companies and organizations, from first responders to even a certain radio station. Our team is here to help you look amazing. Our clothing is of the highest quality, and you will love your logo on the finished product. We are a locally owned small business who simply wants you to look great. Find out more at grittygearcompany.com. Have you ever met someone who not only can help you on a deep spiritual level, but also potentially change your life? Refined Divine is an extremely gifted psychic medium who travels the nation and lives right here in the Midwest. And she offers mediumship, mentorship, house and business parties, energy healing, palm readings, and so much more. Refined Divine has helped thousands, and she can help you.
Hi, this is Psychic Medium Deb. I cannot wait to hear from you. You can go to refineddivinepsychic.com.
And join me tomorrow on GhostBox Radio with Greg Bakun. We are going to have on a friend of mine, broadcaster Tim Dennis. You may remember Tim from Darkness Radio. Darkness Radio is still going on. We're going to be talking about that. We're going to be talking about his paranormal experiences. And because I am such a student of broadcasting, we're going to talk about broadcasting as well. Him and I went to the same school for broadcasting. Different times, of course, but it was still a lot of fun. It's always fun to catch up with someone who also went to Brown. So we are going to be doing that tomorrow. We are having just an incredible conversation with Kathleen Marden. She is the niece to Betty and Barney Hill. You remember Betty and Barney? They were abducted in 1961, and the story of how that eventually came out, how it affected their lives, all that is very well documented. In fact, very well documented by Kathleen herself. Go to her website, kathleen-marden.com. You can pick up her book amongst all of her books there. But if you want to talk about the Betty and Barney Hill UFO experience, you can pick up Captured, the Betty and Barney Hill UFO Experience 60th Anniversary Update, let alone other books that are there that just all it's going to do is enhance your understanding about what's happening here, what's going on. And I want to talk about in this last segment with Kathleen, I really want to talk about your journey because, like we said at the top of the program, what happened to these two people, your aunt and uncle, has completely forged your life. When is it that you yourself get some sort of UFO activity in your life?
Well, I was very close to Betty. We were a close family. And Betty started to do scientific experiments with two men who worked for IBM. Mm-hmm. They were also members of NICAP. And they would give her a script to read. And she would go out every night at 9:00 and send telepathic messages to the ETs according to their requests. And she would give the longitude, the latitude, the number of days in the year, the day of the week, etc., all sorts of details. And you'll see that in Captured, one of their maps.
Okay.
And so she would do that. And then they would go out looking for craft, and she would go out looking for craft. She would be sending messages for craft to land on my grandparents' farm, for example. And during this time frame, there were a lot of UFO sightings in the area of New Hampshire where I live, southeast New Hampshire, and landings in fields, lots of documented landings. And we actually had a documented landing on my grandparents' farm. And it left physical trace evidence. There were 2 witnesses to the craft that night. And an investigator came out and took physical evidence, investigated the site. And after that happened, we started to have very strange activity in my childhood home that we hadn't had previously. Light orbs. Then this wasn't ball lightning.
Right.
The conditions were not right for that. Light orbs that would just float through the air or dart towards someone. They seem to have intelligence. In fact, years and years later, after I was married and I was back, I had a couple of kids, back visiting my mother. My son was in my brother's bedroom, and there had been a lot of activity in his bedroom. And during the night, I heard a lot of commotion. And so I woke up and I went over to his room to tell him to go back to bed. And there he was, chasing around a light orb, yelling and squealing, and it seemed to be having a good time with him as well. And I was totally shocked by this. I picked him up and took him into my bed, and we slept very late the next morning. So I don't know if anything happened to us that night, but that's one thing that our research has indicated happens to the majority of experiencers of contact. Another thing that happened is the sense that something unseen is walking on the bed. I had that happen in my mother's house another time when I was visiting with my husband. And it wasn't a cat on the bed. It was my mother's bed. And she said, "Oh, I forgot to tell you about that," the next day. And I, at that time, had no realization of what it was. I thought there must be a ghost in my mother's house. That's the only way we thought. But then I started to piece it together, because although my mother and I never went public with this, and I've never said anything about it until within the past 5 or 6 years, I guess. My mother and I were taken to craft that night. We remembered finding ourselves on craft. And in fact, I was absolutely terrified. And it took me years to be able to remember precisely what they looked at. I was trying to remember the features on their face. They were standing around the table. I felt like I was being operated on. I was having some kind of surgery. And it changed my life completely. I was just such a well-adjusted kid growing up in a loving household. I was on the school student council. I was a good student, planning to become a medical doctor, going to college right away. And this was so incredibly distressing that it really changed my life. I took a year off between high school and college, and it changed the direction of my life as well. And finally, I was like Barney. I didn't want to acknowledge it. I just wanted to forget about it. I spent years attempting to convince myself that there was some common answer for that. But then, when there are witnesses, when there's physical evidence left behind, how can you continue to deny that? And finally, I took a test as well, and it was to determine whether or not I had UFO abduction syndrome, if I was a wannabe, or if I was just somebody who had never had an experience. And I was just right in the center of having UFO abduction syndrome. That was administered by a psychologist. So, yeah, I mean, it was all there. It profoundly impacted my life. And eventually I decided that I was going to do my own investigations. I'd met a lot of the really fine early investigators like Jacques Vallée. I was very impressed by him. Dr. Simon and John Fuller and Walter Webb, all of these people that I knew, and Betty's friends who were investigators and involved in all of this as time went on as well. And I just decided that I was going to leave my career. My health was failing anyway, and to become an investigator. I joined the Mutual UFO Network, and I began my formal investigation in 1991, although I'd been investigating it for years. And from the early to mid 1980s, I was studying under Betty as her, she was my mentor.
Gosh.
So, yeah.
There's so many things. I mean, you said like 5 things that we could each have an episode on to go into greater detail. One of the things that I just, first of all, what an incredible story, what an incredible experience that you've had, and to be able to help others going into MUFON and really helping people, and go to Kathleen-Marden.com, because you'll be able to see exactly how she's helping other people. But, you know, one thing that I find very interesting, and we have about 3 minutes left here, the thing that I find very interesting too is how people confuse paranormal activity with possible UFO alien interference. I've seen this. I've heard about this. I think it's such a fascinating topic to it that, you know, people see orbs, and I think your orb that you saw is very different than the orbs that we may see with spirits and stuff. But I mean, to have that is really like, what are we looking at here? That's the thing. You know, what is it that we're actually looking at?
We have to separate them out, because orbs can be any of a number of things, from ball lightning to
dust,
plasma, to ghosts, to ETs, and from what experiencers have told me, I've never seen this, but sometimes an orb can actually like expand or pop into an extraterrestrial entity standing there on the floor. And so it seems that as they come through this portal, which I think is an interdimensional portal, maybe it's technology, I don't know, but they come through as orbs. That's what people see. But when they leave that portal, they are then entities, non-human entities.
Do you think that, based on that, do you think that they also have like they could, if they wanted to, put a sort of camouflage to them so that we can't see them and they could be in the room with us?
I know that they can do that, and it might be that they're just vibrating at a higher frequency than that we're just more solid. It could be that they're just outside our visual range, because we don't have a very broad spectrum. Dogs and cats have a broader spectrum than we do. So that could be it. But I know that I have been in their presence, and I can feel a very strong tingling sensation.
This is what a conversation here. And I want to, first of all, Kathleen, I really hope that you could come back on with me sometime. There's so much I want to talk to you about.
I would love to.
That's awesome. Folks, once again, Kathleen Marden, check out her website, Kathleen-Marden.com. You can read about her work that she's done documenting Betty and Barney Hill, plus also buy her books. I'm going to have you back on. Thank you, Kathleen. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
All right. We'll be back tomorrow with Tim Dennis. Everyone, have a great night.